So I want to thank you all for joining us on Stop 5, our final stop on the roadmap to driving results. Today's webinar is a simple recipe for social media success. This session, like I said, is part of the webinar series we're running this week, and it's designed to help small businesses and nonprofit organizations like yours to really focus on foundations that will make your online marketing efforts more successful. When we're talking to so many small businesses and nonprofits around, we find that they often have foundational elements that aren't there or set up and working to the best of their ability. Social media is just one of those tools, and it's most valuable when it's combined with other marketing efforts. If you've joined us throughout the week, you've probably heard us say a few times how all of these tools actually start to tie together. Today, we're going to talk about social media and how you can start working with some of these other tools that we've mentioned this week. And we'll also talk about the foundational things that you'll want to have on your mind in order to have a successful social media strategy as well. A lot of times we find that social or small businesses know they need to be on social media, but they often feel overwhelmed. It can be hard figuring out which channels to be on and are best for your business, how to best engage with people and get results that grow your business. All of that can seem overwhelming. And we also know that you don't have a lot of time or resources to help you keep up with social media. So let's start by taking a look at a few stats today. One big benefit of social media is that you can influence your audience. 45% of shoppers say that social media helps to hook their attention. Another benefit to social media is that people want to show support for causes that they believe in. 84% actually choose to share information in order to simply help spread the word and show their support. In this day and age, people really want to be able to find and communicate with you on social media. And the truth is that about 20% of consumers are likely to buy from brands that they can reach on social media as well. Now, these stats right here are just a few of the reasons you should be using social media. And today we're going to touch base on how you can get started without spending a lot of time and getting this overwhelmed feeling. With all of that in mind, let's take a look at our agenda and see more specifically what we'll cover in today's webinar. We're going to start by talking about the foundations or the essentials to think about in your strategy. Then we're going to provide the 15-minute plan where you'll be able to accomplish a variety of things in order to help you to meet your goals. And lastly, we're going to talk about how you can grow your business, and we're going to touch briefly on the pay-to-pay world of social media ads. Before we get into all the details, allow me to more formally introduce myself as well as my guests for today. My name is Stephanie French, and I'm the content manager for webinars here at Constant Contact. And I'm very happy to bring back Dave Charest. He's the Director of Content Marketing, in order to continue our conversation in this series this week and more specifically talk about social media today. Do you want to hop on and say hello?
Hi, Steph. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us here today. We've made it. For those of you who have been with us every day, which has been great to see, thank you so much for joining us as always. Really happy to see the comments that we've been getting after these sessions and glad that these have been helpful for you. And I'm hoping this sets the stage for you to be joining us later in the year as we start to go deeper into a lot of these topics and start to invite more people to join us and share their expertise with you. At any rate, really glad to have you here and really glad to hear that so many people are learning things through this series, and that makes us very happy. So thank you, and happy to be here, Steph. Good to see you again.
Of course, you too. All right, well, before we dive into the first section, I do want to get an idea of how you're using social media today. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll on your screen. And I would love to know, why do you currently use social media? And this is a check all that applies scenario. Is it to drive sales, drive awareness of your business, to build community, to grow your email list, or do you feel it's just because someone told you to? That's okay too. We'd really love some honest feedback here. Sometimes with these things, some of these tools, you know, people use email or social media because everyone is doing it, and that's the way to go without really having any sort of background. So Dave, currently I see the majority, 93% of people are saying to drive awareness of my business organization. That's awesome. 62% are saying to build community as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think, you know, as we'll talk about, oftentimes Yeah, oftentimes people will think of social media, and I'm glad we don't see this as much anymore, but particularly in the early days, it just becomes another channel to kind of just start shouting about your business and starting to, buy this thing that I have and do all of that. And I love to see so many people using it to drive awareness for their business or organization, because ultimately that's what it's all about. It's about, getting your name out there, keeping your business top of mind, keeping your organization top of mind, allowing people to engage with you. I love that. To build community is in second place at 60% at the moment. Again, another great way to start thinking about social as a way to strengthen those connections and those relationships that you have with your customers or your constituents, whatever the case may be. Looks like third is to drive sales, and I think that's also right. Ultimately, we get there, but we don't start there with social. As you'll see, as we've been talking about many of the things this week, is that it's all about kind of using all of these tools together to give you almost permission to be able to start driving sales with channels like social media. So I love it. And I love that some people have said because someone told me to. And that's always great
Yes,
because people will tell you to do things and then they don't tell you how to do it. So it's like, gee, thanks. So that's great.
exactly. And so Elise also said in the questions window that she's not currently using social media for her business. So if you are someone who's that, we'd really love to know, share that in using the questions window as well. So I see 79% of you have voted. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this. Thank you all for doing that. And I'll just share the results with you on how it all turned out. So 46% to drive sales, 89% to drive awareness of your business and organization. I love the whole idea of building community because that's where you really get the engagement piece of it. 29% to grow your email list. That's just one way that things are starting to connect together to all these different tools that we've talked about this week. All right, so let's dive in and let's talk about the essentials here. So I know for many of you, the thought of social media can be overwhelming, like I said before, and we hear this question all the time. Do I have to be everywhere? The truth is, no, you don't. Our recommendation is that you start by using one primary social media channel, and then you can start to add to it over time as you figure out what works and what doesn't for your business and your audience. So Dave, as we're getting started here, any other advice you want to throw out there so that we're not having social media overwhelm us?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big thing we hear time and time again. And I know even personally for projects that I do on the side, right, social media can seem like a big time suck. And even, for the most part, I know pretty much what I'm doing in some instances, right? I don't know every in and out of it. But even for that, like I'm still going to choose to just pick one of the things that I think is the best for me to use for my particular project that I'm working on. And, yeah, you can use maybe one or two, but if you focus and you really stay focused on using one and learning the ins and outs of that platform and starting to see who are the people that connect with you there, and what are the things that you're doing that actually get engagement and have people start connecting and doing those things with you, that's going to be where you probably find your best bet. And then once you do that, you can build on that, and you can set up those baselines for yourself. You know what works. You start to see what's really doing things for you. And I think that's really the important thing here. Oftentimes we see people because it's like, all right, I got to be on social media. There are all these channels. Let me get on all these channels. And again, we think that's great to just claim your name, the business name on those places so that you have them when you're ready to join them and that somebody hasn't like taken those from you. But really, if you're trying to do it all at once, particularly if you're a one-man team or have a very small team, helping you do this stuff, it really does get overwhelming, and it's just not gonna get you those results that you hope for. You're kind of doing too much with too little return, where if you focus and do more concerted efforts, you're going to get better results from that one platform that you're thinking about. Or you're going to know, hey, this is not the platform for me because you've given it a really true start versus, again, trying to do everything at once.
Awesome. Some good information there. And so I'll have you talk about this, but once you start to expand beyond that one primary social media channel and you start to learn what works, we want to suggest that you modify your post to suit each channel. And Dave, I'll have you talk about this example here from Netflix.
Yeah, and you've probably heard us mention this earlier in the week if you joined us for the first session, but I think this is one of those things that indicates or shows you how you can do things a little bit differently. And it's actually one of the reasons why I love our social media tool so much, is because when you're setting up posts, you can actually modify them a little bit for each of the channels that you're sending out something to. And really here we have an example of Netflix that's on LinkedIn and an example from Netflix that is on Facebook. And you can tell, obviously, LinkedIn is more one of those channels that is more of a professional network, and it's talking about business and business professionals and all of that. And so they're focusing their content there on the business of running Netflix and their employees and those types of things. And then on Netflix, well, again, that's more about people watching shows and binge watching Stranger Things, and it's talking about the shows that people can be doing those things with. And so that's just a simple way to show you the difference between and how you might modify a message between those two channels and how they can both provide value to your business.
Awesome. So Harry just put a question in for us. What media do you start with? Like, what's the most popular or what's the most effective for your market? I know I've heard you talk a little bit about this, so maybe you can expand on that.
Sure. So it's a great question. And I think that the reality is it changes all the time, because all of these platforms really try to, get in and push the thing. And then they really give precedence in terms of, right, as we've talked about, social channels really being run by algorithms. And so they start to favor one thing over the other. And I would say what's really hot right now, of course, is you'll see a lot of people using Reels, like on Instagram, or doing TikToks, like these short little fun videos. The other thing that's really hot right now is audio, whereas a couple of years ago, it was really more just straight up video. And with the rise of, you may have heard of the site Clubhouse, which is more of just an audio platform, and think of it like live podcasting, if you will. Twitter is trying to copy that. Facebook is trying to copy that. And so they're putting that front and center and trying to drive you to do these things and build these engagements with those things. And I think the reality is not everybody is comfortable being a first adopter with all of those things. And what I like to say is pick the vehicle and the channel that you're most comfortable with in terms of your personality, or maybe the person that might be on camera for you or doing audio or doing something. The goal really is to be creating some type of content that you can feed these channels. And so, for example, Steph and I are very comfortable in this webinar format. And so what we'll probably end up doing at some point is maybe transcribing these sessions. We'll take little clips from them, and we'll do things that we can then use in other channels. And so that's kind of the point, right? Find a way that you're comfortable creating content that is easiest for you. And then you can always modify those things to create other avenues, or video or written content or audio content from them. It's just, finding the thing that's best for you.
Yeah, definitely. And really, I want to just point out, like, some businesses are obviously a little bit more visual. Maybe if you're a fashion designer, you're in the art industry, maybe you're an artist, maybe Instagram, where it's so visual, might be a good place for you to start. If you're someone who lives in the B2B world, or you work with businesses on a regular basis, maybe that's a good place to start. If you're still not sure after some advice like that, maybe even think about the most popular channel out there, which is probably Facebook or Instagram. I think Instagram is probably growing more and more. But just a couple of things to think about. Facebook is going to have that really large audience, but I think Instagram is not far behind on that. But some great advice from you, Dave, as well. Now, often we hear people don't know what to post, or maybe they're already posting and not getting any results. They're just out there and they feel like they're spinning their wheels. So we like to think about social media and your activities here in 3 buckets: increasing awareness, providing customer service, and driving action. Do you want to talk a little bit more about these, Dave?
Yeah, and so really, again, this gets us to this idea of that sometimes, again, social can feel overwhelming because it's often moving so fast. Things are always changing, and there's something going on. And then you get seduced by seeing all of these, cute little cat videos and all of these TikToks too. They're coming back these days, I hear. But TikToks, right? You hear all this stuff coming and happening. And really, ultimately, at the end of the day, what we want to do is, again, remember that we're trying to run a business. And so we want to do those things that are going to, at the end of the day, eventually lead to a point where it's helping us grow our business and do those types of things. And so this gives you a frame with which to, if you're not sure where to start, at least you're going to be doing things that put you in a position where you're going to be driving some type of business or value for your nonprofit. And so when you start thinking about increasing awareness, this could just be where you're doing things where you're, maybe talking about some of the things that you offer, whether that's products or services, or you're sharing pictures or images of those things, maybe information on upcoming events, products and services, discounts, those types of things. When we get into customer service, many people are turning to social channels for customer service these days. I know, if I have a question about something, I'll often go there first just to see if it's like a quick answer or something that maybe even somebody else is having an issue with, so I can see if they've already replied to that. And so it gives you a great opportunity to provide support to people and answer questions that people may be having. And then lastly, it's about driving action. At some point, you do want to, again, we mentioned it's about engaging, providing things that are maybe even just sometimes entertaining, because social in some levels is a part of that as well. And so if you can do that or figure out a way to do that in a way that makes sense for your business, that's a great way to think about it. But then ultimately, you do want to drive them someplace. And depending on, what channel you're on, there are some different ways to do that, but ultimately it's about getting people back to your site. As I'll reiterate again, I often talk about social media as this idea of it's a big party and everybody's there and everybody's doing all of these things. And through your engagement with people and the things that you're sharing and their engagement with you, you start to find kind of your people, right? And that might be just people in your local community if you're a local business, whatever the case may be. And ultimately, what you want to do is kind of say, hey, come join me at the after party, right? This is where you're coming to my website. This is where you're joining my email list. This is where you're able to kind of build those connections a little bit more. And then those feed each other, because then when you have this list of people that's really connected to your business, you have them on your email list, you're connecting with them there, you're keeping yourself top of mind on the social channels. You can even, promote things that you're doing on social to your email list to get them to come and participate, and then increase the exposure and the social visibility that your business is going to have. And so it's just the cyclical thing that really kind of helps you at the end of the day. But if you stay focused in these areas, this is a good place to start so that you know what you're doing from a business-driven strategy. Yep, Steph.
Sorry, my dog was barking, so I muted myself. Rommel asked a question.
I feel like we're gonna have to get him on the slide next time for the guests.
Yes, we'll put him as a guest next time, and that way you all can see a picture who are asking for it. So Rommel asks, should you only sell on social media? And I want to say, really, you want to have a good variety of information that you're sharing out there, because paying attention to things like customer service, creating posts that drive awareness, those are going to build up and create moments that help people to remember you. Whereas if you're just constantly pushing out and selling all of the time, people may eventually just decide to unfollow you, and I don't think it's going to end up well for you in the long run, which is why I really want to suggest you have a good mixture of things that you're pushing out and paying attention to.
Yeah, Steph, I just want to add to that too, is that, again, this is a whole process that we're talking about. And so so only sell, no, but yes, you can sell on social media. But I think things start to change, right? Because once people, when we've talked about how people get to know your business, or if they've heard about you, they go looking at these places and they don't want to see you just selling all the time. They want to see you engaging and doing those things. But eventually, if that person gets more familiar with your business and knows who you are, and maybe they visited your website or they have purchased something for you, well, social also allows you to kind of do like dark social, which means it's not going to go to everybody. You're actually paying to target certain people. And those are areas where, oh, we've already got this relationship. I know who your business is. And maybe I went to go check out something on your website, and showing me an ad for that maybe has a discount for a particular product or service that you have, I may be more apt to take that up because I already know who you are. I already have this relationship with you. And so it's really finding that balance between getting people to know you, keeping people engaged, and then at the right times using social to sell. And so the simple answer, I guess, is no, don't use it strictly for that, but it can be used for that. You just have to put in the work and kind of earn that ability to do that.
Awesome. That is a really great point there. All these things really should be working together for you. So let's talk about growing your following, because that's an important question that we get all of the time. And a lot of people don't know what to do or feel like they have enough people following them. One strategy I want to start by talking about is following people, and then they typically will follow you back. So Dave, maybe you can talk about some recommendations here on where to start with that.
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned, again, following people. That makes sense. And oftentimes you can use the search functions within these platforms, and you can find people that, well, one, what is the type of stuff that you're going to be talking about? What is related to your business? And you can search what's called the hashtag. I think hopefully most people understand the hashtags now, but it's basically just a way to connect all of these different updates and posts that are about the same type of thing. And so the example on there is like fashion would be one of them, or fashion week specifically, those types of things. So then you can click on that, and then it gives you a list of all the people talking about fashion. And so this is a good way to see the types of things that are getting a lot of engagement, and oftentimes can be a good directional thing for you to think about that you want to use for your business, to say, oh, a lot of people, like, we're in the fashion industry, this is like the hottest thing right now. Is there some way I can create an update or talk about that thing in a way that will get people engaged with it? The other thing is to look at localities. Like, you can start to see where people are in terms of places, those types of things, where people tagged in your area, and you can start to follow those people because they're kind of in the local area if you're a brick and mortar place. And so those are some things. Obviously, checking in with your existing customers. If you have an email list, send an email out. Oftentimes we recommend in your welcome series, you're welcoming people to your list when they sign up, and you're delivering whatever that thing you offered them in exchange for an email address would be. And then you follow up with the second email that lets them know these places that you are on social where they can connect with you. And if you do that, that again gives you that opportunity to stay in touch with them. And so you can get more followers that way. Of course, signage around your store when you're out networking, including things on your cards or any other print materials that you have, let people know where you are. And then, even when you start thinking of, most of these groups have, these platforms have some type of group functionality, and these are communities around a specific thing. And if you can get involved in those groups, and again, this is not a place for you to go dump links and start talking about, buy my stuff, but it's where you can start engaging with the community that are passionate about the thing that you do. A perfect example I'll give is, Sterling Soap, I believe, was telling us they're a Constant Contact customer that sells soaps and shave creams, and they got heavily involved in, or are heavily involved in, a Reddit subgroup that was about the art of shaving. And they were there just to provide help, right? It wasn't about, selling their stuff as much as it was about providing guidance and insights into the art of shaving. And in doing so, that also does, of course, drive value to them, drives people to their website, and allows them to use the advertising functions on that platform to hit this targeted group of people that are interested in the stuff that they sell. And so those are some things that I would think about in terms of what you do, what you have on the screen there, and how you can start to execute against those.
So I love the whole idea of groups. For those of you who can't tell and who have never met me, which is 99% of you on this call, I'm actually over 6'1", so that means I'm really tall, which also means it's hard to find clothes and dresses and pants that are long enough for me. So a couple years ago, I was actually asked, some angel out there in the Facebook universe actually found me and suggested I join this Facebook group, which has been amazing, because now I'm finding all of these tall retailers and all these like fashion designers. So I'm able to find much more clothes than I was able to a couple years ago. And the big thing that Dave touched on there is, again, it's not about these designers and these boutiques out there going into the group and sharing links. Some of it is that, because some of us are looking for specific items, so they're sharing what they have, but it's all about providing value and help to the groups that you're in. So it could be a group that you start, or it could be a group that just really fits your needs, that's out there and is existing, that you can go in and be a part of. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to talk about the 15-minute social media plan, because like we said, it does not have to overwhelm you. So if you're just setting up and getting started, we want to recommend you spend 15 minutes every day, 5 minutes in each of the three places that we talked about earlier. So break it up into 5-minute increments so that you can really focus on each of those three goals. I really hope you remember what they are: driving awareness, providing customer service, answering those questions, and providing action. This short amount of time is really going to make your efforts more manageable. And over time with this plan, you're going to start to learn what works for your audience and your business, and you'll be able to make better decisions. Once you do start to see those results coming in, that's when you might want to invest a little bit more time and resources into your social media activities. So Dave, can you talk a little bit about how much or how often people should be posting?
Yeah. So, we mentioned this 5 minutes on each of these, like 15-minute plan. And I think let's be realistic. Like, yes, you're going to have to spend some time like you're spending here today, learning about these things, getting some of these ideas. There's longer investment, of course, in 15 minutes. But I think what we're getting at is when you get to this point where you're in maintenance phase, you can really start, like when you know what you're doing, you understand the platform, you can start looking at these different buckets here, the awareness, customer service, action, and you can start to build your plan around, okay, like here's when I'm going to check in. I'm going to set up some time in the morning, and I'm going to go, all right, what are the things that my customers need to know about, my followers need to know about, not necessarily in direct relation to your business, but in terms of the topics and the things that your people should care about. So what can I create, or what's the thing that I can put out there, or maybe I have a piece of content already that talks about that thing, and I'm going to put a short little note out there and put that out and see if I can get some engagement with that. Then I'm going to spend my 5 minutes and I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to go in, I'm going to just check my, my at mentions or people talking about me, maybe do a search to see if something that's not tagged, what people are doing something. I'm going to spend a little bit of time and make sure there aren't any things that I need to respond to. And then the action part, and here's, I would recommend kind of like the 80-20 rule, right? So for every 8 posts, do 2 that are really more focused on an actual, like, hey, do this thing for me, which is go to my website or go do something. And so you can start to think about what are those things, like what are the things I want to bring to people's attention so they can come do something on my site. It's about giving, giving, giving. So then when you ask to get something, people are more apt to take that. And so when we talk about that, it's not about just doing something all the time just to do something. It's about, being consistent. So think about ways that you can do things that are on a regular basis. And again, if we're only talking about one channel, you can really start to think about what that means. And then you can really focus on the quality of those things that you put out. And you're going to test, you're going to find the things that work, you're going to find the things that don't work, or maybe you're going to see like, oh, this is really interesting, more people are responding to this, how can I create something else like that? And so focus on at least being consistent. So if you're going to be on Facebook, for example, maybe you do 1 post every day. That's not too bad to think about, but if you're on Twitter, like that's something that maybe takes a little bit more feeding of, and you might do 3 posts a day or something like that. And so same with like Instagram, you're just going to do 1 thing a day or something like that. So you have a consistency to it. And I'm saying a day, it doesn't have to be every day. I'm just giving you an example. You find what works for you. You're going to find that balance between what you can manage and what that particular platform needs. But if you focus on that consistency and giving quality content to people that they're going to want to engage with, you're going to find yourself doing far better than just trying to do a whole bunch of things at once or not having any structure to what you're trying to accomplish.
Awesome, some great points there. And it always helps to plan your social media in so that you can see it in a calendar view and see how often you're going to be posting, and then you might make adjustments based off of that. We've actually put together a planning guide. We're going to share a link to it in the chat window there, and you can use that, take it and print it out and start to put your plan together on what you're going to post and where. And so I want to address a question from Beth real quick. Dave, what are your thoughts on using a scheduler for your social media posts? I'll let you start.
Yeah, I think that's fine. There's often lots of talk about whether or not it's better to do things on platform or to use a schedule. And I think the latest is that, they haven't really noticed much difference. I think here's the deal. Ultimately, people want to generate connection. Like, so Facebook wants people to stay on Facebook, Twitter wants people to stay on Twitter, and Instagram wants people to stay on Instagram, and all of that. And so the scheduling option, I think, is fine. You just have to look out for, if you have something scheduled, And if something happens in the world, you need to make sure it's not something that's going to contradict something that's happened in the world, or, you know, kind of tie into that in the wrong way. You don't want to do anything kind of inappropriate in those situations. But I think it's okay to use those schedulers because it's going to help you at the end of the day. And actually, I think I knew at least Facebook allows you to schedule posts for your page. Like, you can do that stuff right in there. Constant Contact, of course, has a tool that allows you to schedule things for all of your social platforms. It's okay to do that. I think ultimately what you're looking at is, you know, what gets you the most engagement in terms of what you're scheduling. And that's more important ultimately at the end of the day.
Great point. And yes, we do have that social media schedule right in Constant Contact. And we also have another webinar for those of you who have the webinar schedule. We'll share a link to that, and you'll find that within the schedule as well. So if you want to learn how to do it in Constant Contact, you certainly can. So let's move on and let's talk about some ideas for all of these different buckets. First up is awareness. So here on the screen, we've got some examples. There's a dog shelter featuring a dog that's up for adoption. There's a restaurant sharing some information about their dishes and simply asking people to engage and share their favorite dish. And then on the right, there's a real estate agent who's sharing some information on home design for mid-century modern design. Some other ideas I have to generate awareness, you know, think about sharing your products and services and a little bit of information about them. Again, this part isn't so much about selling, but it's about the value you provide or the problem that you're solving for people with that product or that service. This could include some behind the scenes videos or details about how a product is made or how you perform a service. This could also even mean sharing some really great, valuable information that supports your cause or products or services in some way. Dave, what other suggestions might you have for creating awareness for a business or organization?
Sure. So, you know, I really do love those behind the scene things, right? Particularly if you have a product or services, or you're a group that is a nonprofit that is doing something like within the community. You can start to show, like, maybe you're setting up for an event or you're doing those types of things. You have volunteers and you're sharing pictures of those people. You're sharing, you know, you're having those people participate. The more you can get your community participating, the better chances you have of people actually looking and communicating and engaging with that stuff. Because ultimately, right, you know, we love to see pictures of ourselves, right? We love when it's about us. That's what we want, and this is ultimately what you're trying to do. And if I'm really passionate, you know, give you an example. There's a bag company that in Seattle that I really love, and you know, when I'm traveling, I use their bags all the time, and they're always posting things about the new bags they're creating. They're showing their bags in the wild, and they're also showing behind the scenes of like how they design and how they make the bags. And you know, it's not just me. There's a whole community of people that love these bags, and there's, you know, I'm part of a few Facebook groups about these bags and all of that stuff. And it's like, again, people love these things and learning more about them because, you know, if you're the type of personality that gets interested in something, you want to know as much as you can about that particular thing. And so those are all great ways to kind of do that. The other thing to think about is also, you know, we mentioned when people go searching for you, oftentimes the social channels are the things that come up in those search results. And so whether that's the profile or the page, for example, it's also sometimes the posts that you put out there if they're public posts. And so you can start thinking about like, oh, what are the types of things people might be searching for, right? And it's the same thing on your website, but you can start to create like micro content, right, that you would use on these platforms that also allow you to kind of find those things. Another thing to think about would be to look at what are those things that people would search for within the search engines in each of the platforms themselves. Then you can start to see, oh, what are the results that come up there? And this can be a good kind of thing for you to look at to say, people are really engaging with, I'll just use email marketing because that's one of the tools that we sell, right? So if I go on Twitter and say, all right, what are people talking about in email marketing? And I start to see what everybody's talking about, like, oh, there's a conversation or there's a piece of content from an influencer that has millions of followers that everybody's engaging with and talking about. You know, how can I use that topic and create something of my own that I know will resonate with people as well? And so these are all the ways that often we think of social media as just a way to kind of put stuff out. Well, also think about how you can use social media to get stuff out, right? So that it helps inform the decisions you make and the strategies that you take in order to get more engagement with your content. And so those are some things that I would start to think about.
Awesome. Let's provide some ideas for customer service. So what are the ways that we find all of these different customer service opportunities that might be coming in and people might be asking us questions?
So, a couple things that I just mentioned to think about it. Of course, if somebody's reaching out to you on social media, you want to make sure that you're responding to those. Just as we talked earlier in the week, if people are leaving reviews, in whether good or bad, you want to make sure you're responding to those. If people are reaching out to you on social channels, you'll also want to make sure that you're responding to them as well. And sometimes people will tag you directly, and sometimes people don't. So you always want to, it's always a good idea to set up a search in these channels for just your business name without kind of like the Twitter handle or the @ handle if you're on Instagram or something like that, just so you can see if that's actually your business that they're talking about. But look for those types of things. Be important that you can respond to people, because that's ultimately what they want. They want to make sure that you're engaging, and then other people are there's lots of what we'd call lurkers on social channels, and so they may not be engaged in the conversation directly, but they're watching the conversations that are happening. They're paying attention to those things, and so they ultimately want to see that you're listening and paying attention, and doing your best to provide folks with a really good experience.
Yes, definitely. Because a lot of these places are going to be public, especially if someone wants to make a negative comment or try to get something fixed. You want to make sure you're paying attention to that because, like Dave said, it's just it's out there in the public and other people are watching. So let's provide some ideas for encouraging action. I'll let you start here, Dave.
Sure. So, this is where, again, if you've been engaging with people, you've been providing them with content, when you make an ask, these people are more likely to take that up. And it's all about, again, the same communication tactics we're mentioning with email, right? What's in it for the reader? Why should they care? And what should they do next? And so it's all about thinking about those things. And you're ultimately trying to answer those questions in these posts as well. Like, here's this thing that's going on. Here's where I think you're really going to love it. And here's where you can go to find out more information about it. Here's where you can go to buy this thing. Or I'm going to have we're doing a flash sale on social media today, and it's going to end at noon. So make sure you go take that off, right? I was watching recently a show, and someone was talking about how they make individual kind of artwork that is like custom, and there's only a few number of pieces that they create, and then they do social drops on them, and they say like, all right, I've got X amount of these available right now. You can go to the site to check it out. But up until that point, he's also sharing like how he's building the pieces and talking about the art and engaging with the community. And then when he makes those drops, he's like selling those out, and sometimes within a few hours, depending on what it is that he's driving. So those are all ways that you want to think about driving and encouraging actions. Ultimately, you want to also think about how on a regular basis can you encourage people to join your email list, because again, as we said, like social is great. But ultimately something can happen, the site can go down, they can decide to change something, and you want to be able to contact your people on your terms as much as you possibly can. And so having those folks on your email address is really important. You can also think about polls and asking questions, and just, again, looking for ways to engage with people that will give you information that is more helpful down the line.
Awesome. So I want to talk about this this idea of repurposing content, because that's something that can certainly help you to save time. Of course, like Dave said, you want to have a good variety of helpful content versus strictly promotion and selling. So you can repurpose content a few different ways. Maybe think about your blog content. If you're already blogging, you could maybe share some information or a snippet from a blog post. You could even drive people back to that blog post and drive that traffic to your website. You can share your email content. We've actually got a great tool in Constant Contact that allows you to directly share your email to social media. The caveat to that is I'm going to suggest that you don't share your full email on social media all the time, because your email is like that exclusive after party. And so if you just put out a link there and you can offer something of value in exchange for their email address and encourage more people to get on your mailing list that way. Yesterday in our email session, we talked about some different reasons people will subscribe, but exclusive content, discounts and promotions, or to simply support your organization. So you can create a post that encourages people to join your mailing list that way. But another thing is just, if you're sharing maybe an email with an event and you want to make it quick and easy, share the full email and let people see all of the information. What other types of information can people share to save time, Dave?
Yeah, well, so just a couple of things I'll just add to what you just said, and then I'll talk about some other things. But like in that piece with the email content, yes, you can share your email on social, which is great. But again, only do that once in a while. You don't want to share all your emails because there is something to the exclusivity that you offer to people through that email, right? There's something you want to think of that as something special that they're getting. Like the email should be something that people aren't going to get on social. And so it's okay to share things once in a while, but really think about how you can keep that an exclusive channel so people have a reason to be connected with you there more so than just receiving just another place to receive the same messages you're sending every place else. The other thing that I want you to think about, you mentioned sharing blog content. Use those pieces or even use other people's pieces as that, maybe talk about the things that your audience would be thinking about, but try to use that as a way to not just drop a link to the site, but rather think about just writing a post that talks about the thing that thing was talking about, and then maybe in the comments you can put a link off to that thing, because this is a nice way to kind of overcome a little bit of the algorithms of the places a bit, because again, as I mentioned, the platforms are trying to keep people on their platforms. And when you can start an engaging conversation and you get people commenting or engaging with that, they're going to bring that up higher than they're going to look negatively on if you just dropped a link and said, hey, go check out this thing. Well, that's trying to take you away, right? And so they want to keep you on, and so they want to stimulate conversation. So think of the ways that you can do that around topics that you may have written blog posts about or you have content on, so that way people will go there to check out more of that conversation, right? And so it's thinking about it in that way. And I don't know your dog's name, Steph. You have to tell me, so because clearly he agrees with me on that part of it. So
He does.
So that's another thing to think about there. Just some fun ways to keep people engaged there.
So another thing that we want to suggest is that not every piece of content has to be something that you own. And a lot of times we suggest like industry news can be very valuable. And that's something we own, a garage door business. I've talked a little bit about it this week, but that's one thing we found is sharing something else that's relevant to the industry that someone else has written. And then we don't have to do that work, and it's just helping us to get more engagement and sharing all of that valuable content. So we've got a couple of links and information on the screen. I'll have you talk about that, Dave, but we'll also share these links in the chat window as well.
Sure. So, I mentioned using search. Twitter search is a great one to help you start to find. You can see some examples of the types of things that you can search for on the screen there. This really just helps you, again, find those opportunities for things that you might want to be talking about or the things that people are interested in. Feedly is an app that you can use. I think there's an online version as well. I use it on my phone, but it allows you to kind of search for things based around a topic and other people that might be talking about them and kind of like news items that then you can kind of see what the headlines are on a regular basis and know what's pertinent to the people that you might be trying to reach as well. And so that gives you ideas or things to think about or talk about that people will be interested in. And again, it's all about just keeping people engaged. And then the more you can keep them engaged, the more you'll be top of mind. And when you get to those points where you're asking for a sale, you're more, or they're ready to make a sale or buy something from you, they're going to be thinking about your business first. So those are just a couple of ways that you can start to think about it. I think I mentioned Twitter before, right? You can find those things, you can look for those topics and see what people are doing. And so you can think about ways how you can kind of use that idea and start talking about those things as well.
Yeah, and Anisha, this is a great tag along to your question. So you can share an article that's been written and then add commentary. Yes, if you're going to especially share someone else's work, you're sharing the link to it, I would definitely add in some commentary. And sometimes you can even ask your audience like to engage with you, and maybe it's an agree or a disagree situation. And that can really get people replying as well. Engagement is one of those things, or natural engagement. Don't try to enforce it, but natural engagement is really good to help you to beat that algorithm. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to talk about this last section about paid social media advertising. Social media is great, but with some of the recent trends and changes in social media, unfortunately, all of these algorithms do limit your reach organically. So once you've got all of these foundations that we've talked up until this point this week, we really want to suggest that you think and start to run ads to extend your reach and add a little fuel to the fire. Social ads are really a cost-effective way to promote your business. For example, some of the most searched terms on Google advertising can cost $50 per click. And then an average cost per click on Facebook ads are about $1.72. So much more affordable in a lot of cases. And as a consumer, you're likely already familiar with seeing ads, especially in your Facebook newsfeed. Here's some examples. You see them and you know they work, so they're a great way to get your brand in front of more users. Here on a desktop computer, we see it just shows up in the newsfeed. But also when you're on a computer, you also see this sponsored section over here on the right-hand side. That's just another place that the ads can come up. And then over here on the right on a mobile device, this is what an ad will look like. I've seen a few questions from people about boosting a post versus an ad. So they're very similar, but the idea of creating an ad is actually a more advanced version of boosting. An ad actually, creating an actual ad gives you the flexibility and so much more power because you're going to be able to have more design flexibility as well as some options for targeting your ad, which is great. Now, if you've never run an ad before, Facebook is a great place to start, and we've actually created a webinar that runs on a regular basis. We'll share a link directly to one that's coming up soon in the chat window. But two types of ads you want to think about. Someone was asking about collecting leads earlier on social media. A lead ad is a great way how you'll do that. A lead ad is how you're going to collect their information right from within Facebook, because like Dave's been talking about all this time is most of these platforms don't really want you to leave the platform. They want to keep you on there and keep scrolling and keep engaging with all of that great content. So over here on the left, for the example, we see the ad itself. People will click to sign up, and then they can fill out a form that you create and you collect the information you need from them. The lead ad in Constant Contact links directly to your email list so that people will be automatically added into the email list, which is really great. And Dave, I don't know if you had, one thing I did want to mention is that this type of ad really gives you that long-term value because you can connect it with your email marketing. And Dave, I'll have you talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is that, you don't have to keep paying to reach the same people because you can get them onto your email list and you can communicate with them for free. And I think that's something to think about. And then what's great is that, as we always mention, you can use the automated piece of this as when new people get on, start communicating right away, because that's the opportunity that you have when people are mostly engaged with your business. And so think about that. The thing I love overall, though, is if you're getting started with these ads, particularly if you go straight with the Facebook ad creator and you do all that, it can be a little bit overwhelming because there's a lot of options. And what I love about the tool within Constant Contact is it helps simplify that process for you, particularly when you're first getting started, to do these types of ads that we're talking about here. And it can be a lot easier for you to get started with that.
Awesome. And so the other type of ad you want to think about is a click ad. And this is more of an ad that's going to help you to directly drive business, drive traffic to your website, directly drive sales. And these two types of ads can really be used together as well. But just a few things to think about as you're starting to think about how you're going to add a little fuel to the fire, especially when it comes to social media. One of the real benefits of social media ads is you get so much targeting capabilities that allow you to target the right people. Here are just a few things that you can narrow down the people who you're targeting. There's demographics, their location, their behaviors, their interests, and you can even add another layer with what's called a lookalike audience. All of this targeting means that you're really going to be able to target the people who are most likely to do business with you in the first place. And that way you don't waste money.
Steph, I'll just add one thing real quick there.
Yeah.
Before we recap, is that with that lookalike audience, what's really interesting is what you can do is you can really start to, so what that means is you can take a list of customers that you have, and then you can target ads specifically to them. And so let's say you, in your constant contact account, you have your, you have people that are kind of like your VIPs, or people that purchase from you all the time, and are spending a lot of money with you. Like, maybe you want to take that group of people and then put some ads in front of them to say, so you'll get hopefully better results from them, rather than just putting money into your whole email list or something like that to create a lookalike, which might include people that, well, don't even ever buy from you, but they're just like to stay connected to you on your email list. And so some things to think about there that are pretty interesting.
Really great point there. Definitely something you can do as an addition to all of the work that you're doing. So at this point, I want to recap and just have a few things for you to keep in mind as we leave the session today and get to all of these great questions. To be effective on social media, you want to make sure you're focusing your time in those 3 key areas: driving awareness, providing customer service, and encouraging people to take action, to buy, register for an event, donate to your cause, sign up to volunteer, whatever that might be for you. And you can start by spending 15 minutes every day to focus on those 3 goals we've mentioned. Once you start seeing your results, you'll likely be able to spend more time and resources over time for your business. And I apologize again for my dog. I do not know what his deal is today. He's been great all week. And then
It's Friday, people. Sorry.
And last but not least, you can use social media ads to get a guaranteed spot in your target audience's timeline. Get in front of them. You can set up those lead ads to get them on your mailing list, and that really provides more of a long-term value. And you can drive more immediate results by driving people to your website, letting them learn about you, or driving them to the store on your website and letting them buy right there. Anything else you want to leave the audience with today, Dave?
Sure, thanks, Steph. Just, again, we know social can be overwhelming. Don't feel like you have to do everything or you have to be on every channel. Find the things that work for you. We do think it's an important part of your overall online marketing strategy, because it allows you to connect with people and keep your business top of mind in a way that's outside of the inbox, for example, and allows you to do things a little bit differently, and it increases your visibility, right? And so keep that in mind, but don't get too overwhelmed. We have a ton of resources that are going to help you with each of these channels. We have some other webinars that Steph mentioned that will go deeper into these things. And again, we'll be planning things throughout the year to help you think about each of these things a little bit more in depth. But yeah, let's get to some questions. Steph, what do you think?
Awesome. So before we do that, I do want to share the webinar link to that upcoming schedule again. So I'll just put that in the chat window again. That goes to all of our free webinars. If you'd like more webinars like this on different strategies or the things we're going to dive into later in the year, as well as those webinars that walk you through how to use Constant Contact, especially that Constant Contact social media tool that we have. And last but not least, if you don't already have an account, you can sign up for a free trial. We've got tools from websites, online stores, email and social media, as well as ads to help you all along the way. And as we leave today, I'd really like to remind you, there's going to be a survey that'll pop up on your screen, and we'd love to know what you thought about today. And if you want to tell us about the dog, I'd love to hear about it. All right, so let's get to all of these great questions. All right, so Barbara asks, what value does LinkedIn have for a small business? Do you want to start there?
Sure. So I think it depends on, so I think it has value in a couple of ways. So one of the ways is connection with other business owners in your community, or even the industry with which you serve. I think as long as you're non-competing, there are great ways for a small business owner to connect with other business owners in similar industry to learn from each other. So I think that's great value. Connecting with other local businesses in your area, if you do have a physical location or you serve a particular community, this is also great, because then you can start thinking about co-marketing opportunities, or maybe there's a way that you can connect on something that benefits both of the businesses. And then the other piece of it is, depending on the nature of your business, if you are reaching, there's plenty of small businesses that sell to other businesses, and this is also a great opportunity to connect with more business professionals or B2B space in this area, and so you might want to think about that as well. But those are all ways that LinkedIn can help, And LinkedIn has been doing a lot of interesting things here. I've seen lots of engagement happening on LinkedIn these days in terms of allowing you to create polls. You can actually do newsletters right within LinkedIn as well. So LinkedIn is a pretty interesting place to, if it makes sense for you, to spend some time and check out.
Yeah, those are some great suggestions and all that I was gonna throw in there too. So you covered them all. All right, so Harry asks, oh, we already covered that question. Sorry about that.
Harry got really excited for a second.
Yes. What about service companies who provide consultancy? What advice do you have for maybe, let's talk about the platforms as well as some things that maybe they want to post on these platforms?
Yeah, I mean, again, this all really depends on the audience that you're reaching and what it is that your business does. And so, you can make arguments for if the services that you provide make great kind of before and after kind of photos, like things like that. Like think in those instances, I'm thinking of, maybe it's a lawn care company or it's something like that where, yeah, you're taking something that looked really gross and then you make it look beautiful, right? That's a great thing to put on Instagram, for example, right? That's a good place for things like that. But if you provide B2B services, again, you might want to think about going to LinkedIn, where you're sharing kind of, what we might call thought leadership, or you're sharing pieces of your expertise that, highlight the problems or things that these types of businesses may need to think about. And so what it means is really thinking about your business specifically, along with what you offer in terms of a service, and then who are the people that are going to be the recipient of the messages that you want to put out, and then maybe what's the best way to kind of tell that story, and then that helps you decide where you want to do that and maybe the angle that you'll take with how you do that. So those are some tips there that I would think through.
Great ideas there, and I love the whole idea of, again, providing value. We've talked a lot about answering questions that people have this week in a lot of different areas. And if someone is out there, they're asking you a question via phone, they're sending you a message on social media with a question that pertains to your company or your products or services, that might be something that you want to put out there on social media, on your channels, and let people know about. Maybe it's a tip, maybe you use LinkedIn and provide a little bit more because it's got that article functionality where you can create more of like a blog post on LinkedIn. So I like this question from Elizabeth. If your channels aren't growing, what areas should you evaluate to pivot? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, specific to the business, it's a little difficult to say exactly what the things are, but some things I would start to look at are, what are the things I'm doing on those channels? And I would say, let's look at an individual channel, right? Like, are we doing the right things? Are we getting engagement on that channel already? Because if you aren't really getting any engagement, I don't think you can really expect it to grow much, right? Because people are going to be looking at that. So I'd be looking at the things that you are doing. What type of engagement are you getting? And what type of people do you have there already? And are you setting goals for kind of where you're trying to get to? The other thing I would probably look at is, trying to get some feedback from people. You can always do a poll, you can do a survey. Constant Contact can help you with that as well, where you send something out to the people that are on your list, so to speak, to say, hey, what are the things that you would like to see, or what are the things that you want from us on those channels? And then what I would do is also take a look at some competitors. Take a look at the things that they're doing, or take a look at the businesses that are doing really well and see what they're doing. And not so that you can copy them word for word or specifically, but what can you use to help kind of give you a template for things that you see that are working well that you could use. The other thing I would do is also, don't be afraid to look at industries outside of yours and see what's working really well there, and see if there's something that you can adapt to try some different things on those things. But that's where I kind of start to figure out, like, all right, do we need to do something different here? Or is this something we need to kill this because it's just not working, right? So also the other thing I guess would think, how long have you been doing this? Because if you just started, this is your third weekend and nothing's happening, you got to give it some time. You got to put in the reps to really start to move someplace.
Awesome, and I love that whole idea of thinking about, looking at other industries or maybe other companies or competitors, because sometimes we just got to think outside of the box in order to kind of get creative and catch people's attention in the news feeds there. So Cheryl asks, as a female on both Facebook and Instagram, I get so many rather creepy hello, how are you today? I can relate with you there. I ignore them, but honestly, I'm really not enthused about using Messenger at all. Any thoughts? So I would assume that you're probably the face of your business and things like that. I would just probably try to block these people and keep on keeping on. Those types of things, in my opinion, I find are bound to happen on just about any channel. Dave, I know you're not a female, but I don't know if you have any other advice or things you might want
Well,
to add.
yeah, just sorry that stuff happens. It's ridiculous, but I would think of using Messenger, depending on again the nature. Like often you can just use those as directly related to your Facebook page or something like that, and you look at it as a tool, as a way to connect with people and contact people. But if that's the type of thing that's happening and you're not getting any business through that anywhere, there's another area where it's like just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use it. And turn that off, and then look for the other ways that are actually the best ways for people to contact you if they actually are interested in doing business with you.
Great point there. So let's see, we have a question from Kathy. I have heard that hashtags aren't required if the word is already in your post. In other words, a short history of the blockade does not need the hashtag or hashtag and then the word history. Is that correct? Are you familiar with anything along those lines, Dave?
So I think the benefit of the hashtag is really more that you can just click on the hashtag and then it pulls up everything with that hashtag in it, as opposed to you can search and you can find things that have the term that aren't related to the hashtag. I think that's fine as well. But I think if it's something specific and you want to find those things that are directly tagged with that hashtag and people talking about those things, it helps you kind of filter that out a little better. And I think that's maybe the major difference that you're thinking of here.
Awesome. So I do see that we are at the top of the hour and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'll answer a couple of quick questions about the dog. His name is Dudley and he is
Dudley.
a mutt. We believe he's a retriever. He might have some like Catahoula in him a little bit. He has some spots. He's brown and he's pretty cute and usually he's very quiet. But he wanted to be involved in the webinar and help you all learn some social media today. He was very enthused about it. So,
Love
Dave,
it.
I want to thank you again for being here today and this week. We've provided so much great information. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from the audience. Thank you to all of you in the audience for participating today and in the webinar series this week. So I want to thank you all and I wish you all the best success for your online marketing efforts and have a great weekend. Bye
Have a
now.
great weekend, everybody.